Hello and welcome to Lopez Power Lopez YouTube channel. Now, I am going to review a movie for Halloween called Halloween. Now, Halloween is considered by many a horror classic. It kind of redefined the horror movies and started up the slasher genre. Now, the slasher genre, I'm gonna admit I'm not the biggest fan of. I just kind of find it kind of trashy. I just don't find it fun to kill people in weird ways. There's only two slasher movies, maybe three, no, about two slasher movies I only really like. One is Halloween, and one is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. The rest are just trash. And maybe it's because I'm a Christian. I just kind of find it unsettling to see something like that. Like the Friday the 13th movies are just. Have you seen one? You've seen them all. Um, Same thing with most of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and some of the Halloween movies. But Halloween, I have an exception for, and I'll tell you why. It's because it's not putting blood and killing over suspense and atmosphere. This is more of a suspense, the first one anyway. I am at 2 through the whatever number, I don't know how many of them are. There's like 10 of them, and there's like the remakes, I don't know. There's about, I don't know. But anyway, 2 through whatever are bloody slasher movies with, little suspense or great atmosphere or subtlety. The first one, however, directed by John Carpenter, I think is not that. Yeah, people do die, but it's shown off camera. There's no blood at all. And it doesn't, I guess it lets your mind imagine it, and sometimes the mind can be more powerful than what is shown. But with Halloween, most of the movie is Michael Myers stalking Laurie Strode. Now, that it's actually kind of a simpler plot. Like later, he actually tries to go after her. He just wants to, he's a serial killer, and he wants to. And in the first movie, I know later it was revealed it's his sister, but in the continuity of the first movie, he's just, I think he's just going around trying to hurt somebody because it's Halloween. That's just his intent. That's what he's been waiting for years. So, but it's done with how this movie. Okay, first of all, like I said, there's no blood in this movie whatsoever. With the exception of maybe the opening, nothing. There's not really that much nudity in it. It's actually very much, with maybe the exception of the opening, kind of a PG-rated movie, actually. It's very similar in the sense of Jaws. It's pretty much like Jaws, only actually Jaws is maybe a little less subtle, with, that movie was a little more bloody. Where it's more suspense building. We don't really see Michael Myers that much. We do see him standing in certain areas, but you always have the sense that he's around all the time, even when he's off screen. Like he's around watching Laurie, and that creates that in the Halloween look of the movie. With the fall leaf trees and the jack-o'-lanterns in the background, kind of give this movie an atmosphere, a unique atmosphere that is. I think not just with the Halloween movies, but with any horror movie. Nowadays it's all just blood and guts. I think with horror movies from like the 1920s to the early 80s, the last movie to really do this was The Shining. Horror movies were more about creating a sense of atmosphere, a sense of isolation, a sense of somewhat of a dark force, about ready to come at somebody who has maybe a light force, like similar to The Shining. Halloween actually does have that aspect, but it does have that aspect, but it does have the atmosphere and suspense like The Shining. The Shining has that. It has a bunch of atmosphere. Stanley Kubrick's one, not the TV miniseries, but it actually has a sense of isolation. Halloween also has that. Uh, and a sense of it's more creepy, scary, not bloody and gory. I think there's a difference between creepy and scary than bloody and gory. Comparing a movie that's bloody and gory to something that's creepy and scary is kind of like comparing the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland to the the bloody chainsaw mazes that you see for Halloween. And there can be, see, the Haunted Mansion, it has atmosphere, like I said. You get a leery, creepy atmosphere. It's scary. It has a lot of suspense, but it immerses you in this world that is kind of done with creativity. So that's kind of like Halloween in that sense. It's very leery atmosphere, very suspenseful. Like when Michael Myers, this guy has always been kind of hard to kill, even from the first movie, because how that creates suspense is you don't know whether the killer, when she, finally knocks him out or, stabs him with like a sewing pin and he's like on the floor. You don't know whether he's alive or dead. Now, a lot of movies do that nowadays, but what's done with Halloween, and I'll tell you why it's a little better with Halloween, is because it kind of has, even though it doesn't show blood, the reason why, again, because it doesn't show blood, we really don't know if Michael Myers is injured or he's faking it. So it kind of tricks the mind. It gives the mind a sense of realism. Now, like, for example, the Child's Play movies where Chucky gets shot and he's all bloody and he's lying on the floor, it's kind of goofy, it's kind of sick. But, it doesn't really give us a sense of realism. It just gives us a gross feeling in our stomach. But with Halloween, again, because you don't see blood, when Michael Myers is on the floor, you really don't know whether or not he's dead or alive. Because his body could have severe damage, but yet you don't see it. So it tricks your mind. It tricks your mind in not knowing whether he's alive or dead. Now, I think that is a little more effective because it creates more suspense, like, huh? It makes you more engaged, again, because it has a little more sense of realism, and your mind does not know. But this movie's not a flawless movie, but I do like it. I have to admit, I do like it. The teenagers that go around gawking and driving around talking about it's kind of the generic teenage slasher trash, but again, it's not very interesting. That's the only thing about this movie. It's not very interesting. Though Laurie Strode, in the sense of someone like John McClane, who is the everyman type of person, and this happens to her, I guess it does give us a little sense of relatability to her. Other than, I guess I find Laurie Strode interesting, and I do find the kids that she protects interesting, and Dr. Loomis, which I'll get onto in a second, interesting, but I don't find her friends that interesting. So that's the only thing I really don't like about this movie, is that her friends aren't that interesting. Dr. Loomis, played by, oh God, I forget his name. Anyway, he's an old actor, and I think he was a Shakespearean actor too. But what's interesting about Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance, that's his name, Donald Pleasance. What's interesting about Donald Pleasance's performance is that he doesn't really feel like one of those people from the Scooby-Doo cartoons, like, I wouldn't go in there if I were you. he doesn't really seem like a dim-witted doctor or sheriff. He actually seems like a person that's really trying to figure stuff out in his head. He actually seems more. He seems very laid back in what he's doing, but yet very concerned. He always has a concerned look on his face. He seems more actually like a visual character than uh, a talkative character by the looks on his face. Now I know there are many scenes where he gives exposition, but most of the times he's just kind of looking around the neighborhood. You could tell this guy is on the prowl for to try to stop something terrible happening. So I do like Dr. Loomis's Donald Pleasant's performance. Um, how would I rate this movie? Again, I really like the suspense and subtlety it has. I like the atmosphere. I like how Laurie Strode seems like the everyman. So it gives us a little more relatability to her. And I also like Donald Pleasance. After I watch this movie, I do get in that Halloween mood. So I'm gonna give Halloween 1978 a B plus, a 9 out of 10 stars. I mean 9 out of 10. About maybe an 8 out of. I give it an 8 out of 10. A 3 out of 4 stars. It really is. I do find it actually a good movie, which is a lot from me because it is I'm not the biggest fan of the slasher genre, especially Friday the 13th. I do like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is another topic, and the first Nightmare on Elm Street isn't bad, although I it is kind of follows the blood and it's not really subtle and what it does, um, and it does have a lot of you know, pr- kind of mixed messages with the premarital relationships. But I do like how creative the first movie is. It's a very creative. But anyway, that's another topic. But Halloween is the one I think I genuinely like because it's not bloody. It's actually kind of with maybe the exception of the beginning, with a little bit of nudity in the beginning, which I don't really like either. It's actually kind of a PG rated movie. It really is. It's kind of one of those movies, if it wasn't for that one scene, that the whole family could get together with popcorn and kind of, be scared, but also in a suspenseful mood. Because really, it's not that bloody. It doesn't really have any cussing in it. It doesn't have any, like, F words or anything like that. Not vulgar. And it's not bloody. There is a little nudity in the movie, but other than that, it's actually very kind of family friendly, even though the concept isn't really. It's kind of in the style of the Frankenstein. The thing about Halloween, another thing I'll tell you about Halloween, is it's very much in the style of the classic Universal monster movies. Kind of a slow moving antagonist, which again builds up suspense, has that atmosphere. He's kind of in the similar. I always find Michael Myers to be very similar to something like Frankenstein by the way he moves. He seems kind of soulless, and The Mummy. I think it's kind of paying homage to the earlier Hollywood classic monster movies. So it's a good. I think it's a good movie. So again, 3 out of 4 stars, 8 out of 10, a B plus. It's one of the one slasher movies I genuinely like because it's not just blood and guts. It doesn't have blood and guts in it at all. I think there's more to it than just the body count. I think there's actual suspense. There's actual detective solving. There's actual atmosphere, and I think there's some creativity with the way the film's shot. The film's shot beautifully. One of the most beautifully shot horror movies I've ever seen. It looks very professional. Because, again, it's kind of the fall colors, are seen throughout the film. And the cinematography is great. And also, like, the dark shadows in the house, Michael Myers kind of blends in. So, again, that creates a little more both atmosphere and suspense. I wish more movies did that nowadays, instead of just, jump scares and blood and guts. But I do like this movie, so I do recommend it. So I decided to review it because, Halloween is on the cusp, and I thought it would be good. So, take care, God bless, and see you in next review. Feel free to subscribe or comment also. Bye-bye.